Good evening. This is Christmas Eve. Santa's getting ready with his sleigh, loading up. The elves are working hard, getting ready to work all night tomorrow night. And I thought we would do something a little bit different tonight. I know Sunday morning I talked about the Star of Bethlehem, but Monday, December 21st, that was the day of the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which some people think might have been the Christmas star that the Magi, who were kind of astronomers as well as being astrologers, saw the conjunction, and somehow or other God made it clear to them that that was the star that announced the birth of the new King of the Jews. I don't know. Whatever it was something God did, but nevertheless, it may have been something that God used, some natural event like this that God used. But it is true that Monday, this past Monday, December 21st, was the first day of winter. And something happened that made that makes human beings look on the world, look on the sun, look on light, and say, this is as bad as it's going to get. It is the shortest day, the longest night of the year. And from here on, from that point, things will not get darker, but light is on the increase. So the 22nd was brighter, the 23rd will be brighter, the 24th will be brighter, January on into May. Symbolically, as light is on the increase, life is on the increase. For thousands of years, most people in the world, regardless of their culture, regardless of how barbarian they were, how pagan they were, have always chosen some time after December 21st, December 22nd, to have this enormous celebration. And think about what they're celebrating. Darkness is over. Light is starting to increase again. From here on, if we have made it to here, if we haven't died, if sickness hasn't taken us, if age hasn't killed us, if the virus hasn't consumed us, we have managed to get over this hump, and there's a good chance that we can now make it through spring and through summer and on into fall. The world has celebrated this time of year, the solstice, when the sun appears to be standing still in the evening sky. They've celebrated this time of year because of the assurance that summer is going to come back. The sun is not going to continue just to go farther down in the sky and decline, but rather now it's on the increase. It's about to start rising again. It was celebrated in the Roman Empire. Aurelian declared in 274 that December 25th was a special vacation, a special holiday to commemorate the birthday of the unconquered sun, S-U-N. Think about how they celebrated it. They celebrated it by decorating evergreen trees. They exchanged gifts. They feasted. They sang songs. They decorated their houses with greenery and with lights. They were particularly good to poor people. Germans and Norsemen saw that December 21st marked the turning point. And they had a big celebration right after. They called it Yuletide, and they burned the Yule log. There were offerings to the god of thunder and lightning, whom we know as Thor. To a Roman plunked down today in Canyon, Texas, he would feel almost at home, completely at home. He would be thinking, this is the time of year. This is party time. This is the time that Canyon is honoring the unconquered sun. Let's eat, let's drink, let's be merry, let's have a good time. Somebody will say immediately, I knew it. We need to smash lights. We need to tear down these evergreen trees. We need to tear down the decorations, put the food back in the freezer. Here they are celebrating heathen holidays and paying homage to heathen gods. Well, we get kind of illogical and carried away sometimes. The point that I'm trying to make here is not that we shouldn't have Christmas trees and decorations and all that kind of things. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with evergreen trees or with lights or with food. You probably don't even know what I told you today. You probably have all of those things in your house if you have them because of something entirely different. I have Christmas because my family did. The family before them did. And decorations kind of go along with giving gifts, and it's a special time of year to share family time together and to feast and have joy together. It's fun. Christmas was celebrated as the birthday of our Lord first somewhere between 325 and 350 AD. It was a natural thing for the church to do that. They were looking for a good time to celebrate the birth of Jesus. They looked at what the Germans and the Romans and the Scandinavians were all doing. It was a time of year when everybody was celebrating something. And they thought, why don't we use that to celebrate the birthday of Jesus Christ? Now, again, it's easy to get carried away. You know, we will say, well, we've gone to observing days and seasons and years, and nobody knows when Jesus' birthday is. It's not commanded in the Bible. The Puritans in England, they were really opposed to any kind of celebration of Christmas. They brought that to the United States. All of that is true. It is not likely that Jesus was born anywhere near December 25th. There was no customary celebration of his birthday in the very beginning, in the earliest church. So there was really no focus on the day of Jesus' birth. But I think we need to be very careful in criticizing people who would celebrate Christmas as Jesus' birthday. Paul's criticism of the Galatians and the Colossians is often taken out of context, I think, or misused to a great degree. He will say to the Galatians, I fear for you, you've gone to keeping days and seasons and years. And they were doing that as necessary ingredients of worship. There's no freedom in that. They were doing that because they thought that put them in good with God and made them better people in God's sight and won God's favor. If they worship God in that particular way, then God would like them better. And that's the issue there. Paul will say in Romans chapter 14, verses 5 and 6, one person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to God. And whoever abstains does so to the Lord and give thanks to God. Basically, what Paul said there is, if you want to set aside a day special to you to honor the Lord, it's okay. You need to be convinced in your own mind, he says, without thinking that everybody else has to do the same thing, without trying to bind it on everybody as though, people are backslidden if they don't celebrate that particular day that you have chosen to honor the Lord. But there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. Now, I'm not interested in trying to convince you that it's in your best interest to observe Christmas Day as the birthday of Jesus, but just to say there's really nothing intrinsically wrong with doing that. And I'm going to use Christmas, the Christmas holidays, to try to call my attention, or my family's attention, and even my church's attention to the birth of Jesus, where some attention is already focused. I think it's just a good thing to do because the birth of Jesus is really important. The interest that I have today is in the biggest reason the early Christians chose sometime right after December 21st to honor the birthday of Jesus. It was these pagan celebrations. Now, again, that didn't, pagan celebrations does not dislocate that, but think about what the pagans were celebrating. They were celebrating short days are ending, light is on the increase, it won't get any darker. We're going to honor the unconquered sun, S-U-N. And Christians said, let's celebrate the increase of real light, true light, a time when the darkness of humanity was really beaten. Instead of honoring the unconquered S-U-N, let's honor the unconquered S-O-N. That's why I would like to celebrate with you in the next couple of days. Not Christmas so much as what is symbolized by Christmas or by the winter solstice. the conquest of increasing darkness by the entry into the world of the true light that gives light to every man. The world is deep in darkness, oppressed, sick with sin, full of all kinds of misery. Long shadow of darkness, the shadow of death darkened the world. And God sent his only Son into the world, born of a virgin, to live among men and to bring them light. John chapter 1 and verse 5, that whole section of John chapter 1 all the way down through verse 18 is about light coming into the world. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not overcome it. It's the light of God's glory. You know, in a materialistic world, we expect a lot of pomp and circumstance when we think of glory. Glory is about being well known, being famous, or being treated well, or being wealthy, or being powerful. But there's not much glory in the birth of Jesus if we think about it in those terms. He has poor parents. They can't swing a night in these crowded inns in Bethlehem, and he winds up in a stable in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes. But you understand, that's exactly what God's glory consisted of. It's not this inaccessible Jehovah. We have to, I say that word that way. This inaccessible Jehovah, high and lifted up, dwelling in unapproachable light. And that is not what God is trying to convey in Jesus, something entirely different. John 1 verse 14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And you don't see there the bright light of transfiguration or the blazing light that blinded Saul or any of that kind of thing. Although, of course, those are parts of the glory of God. But you see rather in John 1:14 the glory that is revealed in God's grace and truth. The sacrificial love that motivated God to send his Son to live among human beings, to die for human beings, and to reign over human beings. John chapter 2, you have the water turned into wine. And it's really not the correct response to that to be impressed with the fact that Jesus turned water into wine as though we are impressed with the kind of power that he has. What we're called to see is that God's power is used to help people in trouble. This embarrassed young couple who is suffering because their wine has run out, and they're even socially liable, can be sued for this. Jesus steps in and gives them wine so that they can celebrate, so that they can meet their financial and social obligations. Jesus is taking care of these folks. John chapter, and that's when the Bible says that's when the disciples saw Jesus' glory in that first miracle that he performed. John 12, verse 27 and 28. Now my soul is troubled. What shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from heaven. I have glorified it and will glorify it again. And from that point on, Jesus is headed for the cross. The rest of the story is about Jesus going to the cross and dying, and then being raised from the dead, of course. But the glory of God is seen, and John's gospel bears this out. That's one of the big themes and the points of John's gospel. The glory of God is best seen in the cross of Jesus Christ. The message of the manger is that God is not too proud to bend down to lowly men, or too exalted that he cannot see our needs, or too holy to hear our groans. Instead, he identifies with human beings by putting on human flesh, becoming human flesh, and living and dying and living for us. God's reputation, God's glory is enhanced by his gift. I praise the God who has bent down to love me. We see in the birth of Christ the light of great joy. You know, the Old Testament manifestations of God's glory often are connected with judgment on Israel. Israel is rebelling in the wilderness. There is a passage in Exodus 16 I don't remember where the passage is, and I forgot to look it up, and I don't have my Bible right here with me. I printed all these things out. But somewhere, here are the Israelites complaining about God and carping at Moses because they're not being fed well and not being treated well. And suddenly the cloud lights up and God speaks to Moses. That had to be a really scary, eerie experience to realize God's listening to this. He heard all of us complaining and griping, and now he's here. Shepherds on hills with their sheep, and the glory of God lights up the night, and they were terrified. But you understand the message of the angel in Luke chapter 2 and verse 10. The angel said to them, "Don't be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He's Christ the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You'll find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And then the night lights up with the heavenly host singing, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." You see, it's not the message of judgment, as in judgment of destruction and death and eternal damnation, but it's good news, it's peace, it's great joy. The whole story of Jesus' life on earth is bringing great joy to people. When they recognize who Jesus is and know what Jesus is about and make that response to Jesus, there is always great joy, even if they didn't recognize it right away. Matthew 4, verses 15 and 16, which I didn't write down, but land of Zebulun, the land of the Gentiles by the sea, the people living in darkness have seen a great light. Zebulun and Naphtali were lands that were fought over. They were swept away by forces more powerful than they were. They were constantly in the shadow of death. But Jesus comes, and now there is light in that place. There is a time when Satan's shadow is just growing longer and longer and longer. Demon possession is a common occurrence. It just seems as though you could just be walking down the street and Satan could reach out of some dark alley and drag you in and drag you away. But Jesus casts out demons. Today, the forces of evil grow strong. Dark seems to be increasing in so many ways. But remember the solstice. Remember the reality of the birth of Jesus. When the sun stood still at the solstice, when darkness no longer was allowed to increase, night begins to recede, day dawns. 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 2, Paul said, "In the time of my favor I heard you, and in the day of salvation I helped you. I tell you, now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation." It's the light of hope. To the peoples of Europe who were caught in the icy grip of winter, solstice held new hope. It was a new day with expectations of warmer weather, even though the worst part of winter is still coming. You know, those terrible days of January and February. Still, hope is contained in longer days and shorter nights. And in Bethlehem, a new day dawned. A brighter day, a day with new hope, an expectation of a secure future full of hope and joy. Even though there may be some hard times, even though the worst may be yet to come in some ways, we're still assured that God is working, God is busy, God is awake, He has sent His Son, and we can look beyond those terrible times to times of glory and joy and sure salvation. The fullness of hope is not seen in the baby in a manger. The fullness of hope, there are still harsh times to come. I mean, think about after the birth of Jesus. You have Herod slaughtering the children of Jerusalem. You have the rejection of Jesus by those He came to save. Jesus goes to the cross. But on that day of Jesus' birth, light dawned. And it carried the seeds of ultimate triumph. We have not yet received the fullness of our hope. We wait eagerly for these mortal bodies to be redeemed, but day has dawned. Our hope All of our hopes are with that child lying in the manger, the Son of God. The song that we sing, "O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. Yet in thy dark street shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight." It's the light of life. The world is convinced that life consists in the abundance of possessions. True happiness lies in money, lies in power, lies in comfort, it lies in pleasure. It lies in everything just going right without ever there being any surprises, no confusion, nothing jumping up at us at all. But that night in Bethlehem disproved all of that. The Son of God, the author of life, came that we might have life. And he had none of those things that we normally think of that make for the best kind of life. He was poor, he was disadvantaged, he was lowly. But look at what he did have. He had love, he had security, the things from which life is made. You know, we struggle to find satisfaction and fulfillment in life, and we offer all of our excuses. Well, we don't have enough money. We're at the bottom of the heap, and there's lots of people over us and holding us back and keeping us from being really happy. Some disaster happened. My father died when I was young, or it seems that so nobody likes me, or I never get a break. Think about all of that. That is true of Jesus. Poor, had a bad start, had to run away to Egypt before he could even come back to Nazareth and began to live there. Probably he knew of gnawing hunger in his growing up. His father probably died when he was young. Yet he rose up out of Nazareth, this small and insignificant village with a bad reputation. He overcame all of those things that we would call disadvantages, and he overcame the world. He changed the world. Well, yeah, but he had God's power behind him. Exactly. Life is not about having all the advantages or getting all the breaks or having all the dough, but having a close relationship to God just as Jesus did. And that's what Jesus makes possible for us. Jesus' power did not come to him because he was Son of God. He had emptied himself of his equality with God. You remember Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7? Being in very nature God, he did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. I get the idea from the Gospels that nothing really came from Jesus himself as though he were powerful in and of himself, but Jesus received whatever God gave him, and that's what made Jesus who he was. The power came from the Holy Spirit who indwelled him, that same Spirit that Jesus has sent out into the world to indwell us. You know, the days were dark and they were cold. The nights were getting longer, but one day the sun stood still. Night was stifled. Light began to increase. That symbolically was the day that Christ was born in Bethlehem. The Bible tells us, "Wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." And that's really the message of the birth of Jesus that leads to everything else. I hope you have a good Christmas. I hope you have a good New Year. Stay safe. Thank you very much.